Well, good morning again, everybody. My name is Karen Sapio, and I'm the outgoing co-chair of the Next Church Strategy Team.
And I'm Siobhan Starling Lewis, and I'm the incoming co-chair of the strategy team.
And I'm Lori Rabel. I guess I'm the current co-chair of the strategy team. A couple announcements. I am moved from worship just now, so excuse me.
Amen.
So thank you to the Board of Pensions for our coffee break this morning. We love Jesus and healthy snacks and really strong caffeine, so thank you so much for that.
Board of Pensions, woo!
During lunch today, there are going to be optional lunch conversations scheduled, and they're scheduled and listed in your program book. If you'd like to host your own table conversation, then all you need to do is decide to do that. Head out to the information desk, and they will assign you a table for that purpose. So this conference has been a cornerstone of Next Church. And to be clear, it is an expression of who we are and who we hope to be. And after 7 years, Next Church is moving from a conversation to a conversation in action. We are aligning what we do with who we say we are. Next Church is about supporting congregations for the work of Christ in the world. Amen. And Next Church is about equipping and supporting and connecting leaders for that purpose. We believe that Christ's body is alive and well.
Right. So what has that really looked like in the last year in terms of what Next Church has been doing? Just a couple of things that we'll highlight. One of the things that Next Church has been working on is mindful ministry accountability. And well, what's that, you might say? Well, in the Presbyterian Church, sometimes we joke about how we count butts in pews and bucks in plates, right? And I went to, a friend of mine invited me to a Baptist gathering. They're more genteel. They talk about nickels and noses.
Nickels and noses.
Right? So, but the basic thing is, what are we counting? What are our measures of success in ministry? And there's a lot of talk and a lot of agreement that simply counting attendance and giving doesn't tell us everything we need to know. And so we're working on mindful ministry accountability. What are the things we need to be measuring? What does show us that we're being faithful and that we're growing in various ways that maybe aren't reflected by nickels and noses? And we received a very generous grant money through both the Duke Divinity School Leadership Education Fund and the Texas Presbyterian Foundation to do that. And another thing that we are doing is we're exploring a partnership with Johnson C. Smith Seminary and some community organizing groups to look at a pilot program in which community organizing training and theological education are combined and thoroughly integrated to see how that moves the needle a little bit in terms of impact for ministry in particular contexts. And we've been working on that this year.
One of our priorities at Next Church has been to equip and support and connect the newly ordained with colleagues and coaches and resources. In 2016, Next Church partnered with several different institutions and organizations, Union Presbyterian Seminary, Macedonia Ministries, The Outlook, Second Presbyterian Church in Roanoke, Virginia, and Montreat Conference Center. We held for the first time a unique conference for the newly ordained, and we had about 80 pastors and educators show up for an enriching and humbling week of community and coaching. And I'm really excited to announce that Trent will be back in 2018, and there are some postcards on your tables about that. Another thing that we have done is partner with the Board of Pensions for a website that is set to connect newly ordained people with resources. It's called Next Connect PC USA, and you should go check it out. A few notes about the leadership of Next Church. Our director, Jessica Tate, has been with us for several years now. I'm not sure any of us would be here without her. and we're grateful for you, Jessica. I don't know where you are. She's out there. But as we've grown, we have added our beloved part-time communications director, Linda Kurtz. We have to give thanks for our YAV, Sarah Diane Jones. And this is new. Recently, we have asked Reverend Pete Perry to help us with our organization of our relational work for the purposes specifically of fundraising. And he's not with us yet, but he'll be here this afternoon, and we're grateful for that. So, Siobhan, will you share a little bit about
our leadership team? Yes. So, as we've mentioned, a huge portion of Who Next is are people who are volunteering, who genuinely feel this work is coming from their heart. We have elders and clergy and deacons and seminarians and YAVs and educators and mid-councils representatives. And I want to thank them as individuals, also the communities that support them. So their congregations, as well as their context, as well as their schools that are supporting them these days. Several of our volunteers are wearing pins. If you have questions, interests, want to know more about volunteering with Next, feel free to reach out to any of those individuals. Now, last year, we offered a commitment, a desire for something that I hold particularly important is leadership that is diverse in ways that are real. You know what I mean? I talked about the kind of, diversity by numbers, just not doing it. And so we committed last year to having 50% of our leadership be people of color. We didn't make the mark. But we didn't make the mark for reasons that I'm actually more proud of than disappointed in, because we wanted real relationships. It would have been easy to say, do you know somebody who is? But we wanted instead to have authentic relationships. So we've invited friends, we've connected with people, folks for whom they've had relationship with Next. But I'm really grateful that rather than just forcing forward, we've reached 50% for our strategy team, but we just barely missed it for our advisory team. But know that that's something that's intentional work, not for the sake of numbers, but because we know that we are better the more diverse we are. Amen? We are truly honored for the ways in which all of the leadership of Next gives. I want to take a moment and invite any of our strategy and advisory team members that are here in the room to stand up so I can congratulate you and thank you. There are 220 of you today that are here at Next for the very first time. If you're in that group, can you all stand up? It is our desire, sincerely, to get to know you better. I have my table in the back with the family. If you just want to come hold the baby, you just come on over. When you can get it away from Lori. Auntie Lori, as she is now. But sincerely, we want to get to know you. We want to know how we can support you in your context, because you matter to us. You are our brother and our sister, and we're so grateful to have you in our midst. Also want to make a huge thank you for Karen for the work that she's done. Can I give you a hand? Sure. It's been an honor to serve alongside you, and we're so grateful to continue to work with you in Next. But thank you for being a co-chair, because it's a gift. So would you like to say anything?
No, it was a gift to do it. That's enough. All right. All right, now I think it is time to invite up a group of folks who have been working on another project for Next, which is to sort of capture the moment we're in some faith affirmations. So I'll invite Glenn and the rest of the folks to come forward.
Good morning. We tell stories because stories make all the difference. We struggle to find the right words because words matter. They matter so very much. In the difficult, divisive moment that our nation now faces, we need a word. We need not just our immediate reactions and responses, but we need a word rooted in the best theological tradition, centered in Jesus Christ. With the gracious support of the Presbyterian Foundation and Next Church, this statement of faith that you'll see on the table before you, the Sarasota Statement, was written. Brandon Frick, Katie Baker, Chris Curry, Bertram Johnson, Cindy Rigby, and Leighton Williams are the primary authors. Jessica Tate and I convened the group. We held their coats. Here are Leighton Williams and Bertram Johnson to tell you more about it.
The statement that we wrote is divided into 3 parts. The first section is on tribalism, the second on political idolatry, and the third on our commitment to beloved community. Today, Leighton and I will be reading from the first section.
To the people we ignore, reject, or demonize for living outside the tribes we claim, we trust our Lord and Savior, who calls disciples to love unconditionally, who confronts brutality by refusing to take arms, and who defies racism by forming a community out of every tribe, people, and nation. Jesus aligns with people who are poor, meek, persecuted, and reviled, and calls the church to do the same. To be a Christian is to be continuously undone and remade by a Savior who encounters us in ways we might not expect, through a collection of people we might otherwise reject, screen, or censor. We grieve the ways in which we create division between people whom Christ has created for community.
We grieve that we have segregated and broken our communities along worldly constructs of race, class, ideology, and belief. We commit to move beyond like-minded choruses that reinforce our biases, joining the community that reflects God's grace, Christ's kingdom, and the Spirit's action. We commit to reject and resist all racist practices, however explicit or subtle. We commit to dismantle white supremacy, including societal structures that maintain and protect white privilege. We defy attempts to target and ostracize fellow human beings on the basis of blood and soil.
Friends, as Bertram mentioned, there are 3 sections to this statement, and we would love to have more time to read through that and discuss it with you. So we will be hosting a lunch conversation in Trianon E, which is down 2 escalators, and we invite you to come and talk with us and hear more about the process and the team and how this statement came together. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a great morning worship, and as we sang that we are not afraid today, I thought how appropriate it was that we would welcome Tom Charles to share his story with us. Tom Charles is a longtime member and elder at Nassau Presbyterian Church in Princeton, New Jersey, and has served in the past as chairperson of its Mission and Outreach Committee. He has also coordinated the resettlement of the last 6 refugee families sponsored by the Nassau congregation. That congregation has sponsored a total of 12 such families over the last 60 years. The current family, Sunni Muslims from Syria, arrived in May of 16, and they have presented a special challenge as the husband-father is blind and the result of an attack on a civilian area near Damascus. The Nassau congregation, a local mosque, Princeton Theological Seminary, and members of the wider Princeton community have come together to support this family. Tom coordinates all these activities. and meets with the family every Saturday morning to help them prepare their bill payments, to review their schedule for the coming week, and to enjoy their wonderful hospitality. Partly prompted by the extensive publicity resulting from NPR reports on this family, Tom has begun working with various faith communities around the country who are considering such sponsorship. Tom is a graduate of Dartmouth College and the University of Delaware with an MBA. He works as a bank consultant and a residential loan originator, both of these work activities largely neglected since the arrival of the most recent refugee family. Join me in welcoming Tom Charles.
Good morning, everyone. Some of the most faithful moments of my life have come when I've welcomed a refugee family upon their arrival in America. They arrive typically at an airport, usually after a long flight from a dangerous part of the world, often after many years in a refugee camp. Always after a thorough multi-year vetting process. And by definition, after having fled their home country due to persecution, violence, and torture. The expression on their faces as they walk into the arrival terminal, tired, anxious, uncertain, but always trusting in the opportunity for a new life in America. And then to see the sense of relief appear on their faces as they realize that they are indeed being met by someone. Typically, they don't know the names of their greeters or even the name of their church sponsor. But they've arrived, they're embraced, a translator makes the introductions, and then we drive together to their new home. From my perspective, the themes of this conference, movement across barriers, new understanding, and life-giving transformation, are beautifully fulfilled in the refugee resettlement experience. I've been asked to state my objectives at the beginning and at the end, so I'll do that now. My objectives are doing this testimonial are threefold: to share with you the refugee resettlement tradition at Nassau Presbyterian Church in Princeton, to ask each of you to become an advocate on behalf of the refugee resettlement program here in the United States, and to implore you to go back to your faith communities and urge them to sponsor a refugee family. If you've already sponsored a family, do another. I especially ask these things of those of you who live in a community that is fearful of the stranger, because the most effective way to reach the hearts and minds and souls of the fearful is to give them the opportunity to know the person behind the refugee label. I often wonder why I have such a passion for this work. I think there are several reasons: that the Charles family came to America as refugees themselves, Anabaptists who fled northern Switzerland in the early 18th century, that my grandfather was born and raised in a Mennonite home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that my parents embraced the diversity of the world, especially when we lived in Geneva, Switzerland during my high school years, and that my wife and I were fortunate enough to find Nassau Church, a congregation that already had a tradition of welcoming refugee families, with a total of 12 families now sponsored over the last 60 years. But most of all, my passion comes from the realization that I am most fulfilled as a Christian when I do this work, receiving back so much more than I provide. Put very simply, it's when I am working with a refugee family that I feel closest to Christ. Ironically, very ironically, in fact, it's also when I feel most fulfilled as an American. The most patriotic thing I have ever done is welcome a refugee. My family has also benefited from this experience, especially when we've hosted a refugee family in our home for several weeks until a more permanent residence was available. One word of warning: If the refugee family offers to do all the cooking while they live with you, be prepared for dramatic weight swings. With Bosnian cooking, I gained weight. With Burmese cooking, more specifically ethnic Chin cooking, I lost weight, a lot of it. More seriously, it's no coincidence that my older daughter, Marissa, now lives and works in Yangon, Burma, inspired by the Burmese refugee family that stayed with us back when she was in high school. For the congregation of Nassau Church, the refugee sponsorship process represents one of the most active and sustained mission initiatives that we engage in, bringing us closer to the challenging ideal of a missional church. Church members have volunteered for a host of activities, including ESL instruction, rides to medical and dental appointments, play dates for the children, and invitations to their homes. Princeton Theological Seminary, in turn, has provided a house for the family during their first year of residency here in America. And our interfaith relationships have been dramatically expanded and nurtured as we have worked closely with members of the Islamic Society of Central Jersey. Members of the mosque have introduced the family to Halal food stores, helped with translation, and have driven the father to Friday prayer each week. It's important to note that both the seminary and the mosque have played critical roles in this sponsorship, and we thank them once again here today. Other folks in Princeton, university students, public school staffers, local government service providers have also been fervent supporters of the family. In a broader context, a multitude of messages from around the country were received in our church office following the NPR stories about the family. Some were from self-professed agnostics. I'm not a Christian myself, but to me, this work exemplifies the message of Jesus Christ, and I thank you for reminding me of that. Some were from people questioning their faith. I was raised a Christian, but I don't practice now. But your act of taking this family in and caring for them is the truest definition of living as Christ might have lived that I have heard about in a long time. I smiled and cried as I read the story. Some were from people whose faith may still be renewed. I was raised in the church, but I left decades ago as I grew more and more embarrassed by the community in which I was raised. What your congregation is doing has inspired me to think again. I know there are churches out there like yours that act in a manner that look more like the way I understand the Gospels. Although I'm not sure I can describe myself as a person of faith, perhaps I can find a community like yours and get involved. And some are from fellow Christians. Thank you for your inspirational work and for being a great example of faith in action. My own Christian faith was just strengthened by yours today. But of course, it's not about me, it's not about us, it's about the refugee. The 12 refugee families sponsored by Nassau Church over the past 60 years have come from 10 different countries, including Bosnia, Burma, Cambodia, Cuba, Hungary, Indonesia, Iraq, Sudan, Vietnam, and most recently, Syria. They have found employment as a restaurant manager, mechanical engineer, a physical therapist, a teacher at a Montessori school, a computer network specialist, a dentist, an inventory manager, a tailor, a food preparation worker, and a librarian. Many of them now are among my closest friends. For example, Zretan Kopanja, a refugee from Bosnia, often invites me over to his home to sample the latest batch of plum brandy made by his brother back in Belgrade. I'm fortunate that I live within walking distance, so I don't have to drive home after one of these evenings. It's true. And refugees often give back to the refugees who follow them. Zretan's wife, Yasminka, now provides free dental care for any refugees sponsored by our church. In our experience, refugees are courageous, resilient, hardworking, selfless peace-loving, and appreciative people. They are the ones who have been brave enough to leave behind family and friends to find a better life. They live for their children. They absolutely live for their children. They are the salt of the earth. And when they become citizens, they are some of the most patriotic Americans I know. More than any of us who were born in this country, they appreciate the security and freedom that America provides. And for this reason, they help make America the great country it is today. Thank you. The Syrian Muslim family being sponsored by our church arrived in Princeton last May after waiting 3 years in Jordan for UNHCR and State Department approvals to come to America. The family fled to Jordan after Osama was blinded by a mortar attack while visiting his uncle's home on the outskirts of Damascus. After Osama's first attempt to test an escape route out of Syria, and remember he was blind at this point, he was arrested and imprisoned for several months. His second attempt to reach Jordan was successful, and the family then followed. When we were approached by the Jersey City office of Church World Service to sponsor this family, we were told that we were the only sponsorship group in New Jersey that they thought could handle the complexities of this case. A nice compliment. But that apparent compliment quickly became a challenge, and in turn, a faith obligation that we could not ignore. Today, the 4 children are doing well in school, also attend an Islamic and Arabic study program at the local mosque on Saturday afternoons. Gada, the wife, is benefiting from ESL classes every day during the week, and will soon have her driver's license. She did not pass the first time. She will pass the second time. It happened to me, so it's okay. She will also be in proud possession of a donated minivan as well. A van, we needed a van because that's a family of 6. And Osama, the husband, is participating in a mobility and vocational training program and regularly attends Friday prayer. Now, in an effort to share these experiences and to encourage more faith communities to sponsor refugees, we have recently compiled a refugee resettlement guide that has been written from our perspective as a community sponsor. Most guides are written from the referral agency's perspective. We are on the grassroots. We are the sponsor. So we decided we would put one together. It provides a step-by-step description of the resettlement activities required of a sponsor and includes examples of many of the documents that a sponsor will encounter. A PDF file of this guide has been posted on the conference website. You could also get one by emailing our church. You could share your email address with me. I'd be glad to send it to you. And there are copies on the table out in the hallway, a few copies. I've also been asked to host a luncheon conversation, I believe at 1 o'clock. I have no idea where it will be, so I can't tell you now. Right here? Right up front? Okay, right up front here. So for anyone who is interested in talking about this process, you're more than glad to join us. A brief comment on the executive order issued last week that reduces the number of refugee admissions from 110,000 to 50,000 for the current fiscal year, and also ends, at least for now, the admission of Syrian refugees, among others. This reduction in the admission numbers will severely damage the already fragile refugee resettlement network here in the United States. Church World Service alone, one of the 9 referral agencies in the United States, is projecting hundreds of layoffs in their international staff, as well as the closing of some of their resettlement offices here in the States. If their Jersey City office, which is the only one they have in New Jersey, is one of those closed, then community sponsors like Nassau Church and the Jewish Center of Princeton will have nowhere to go to find their next refugee family, since a sponsor can only receive a family from an in-state referral office. And the banning of Syrian refugees not only ignores the population of greatest need in the world today, but also feeds into the terrorist narrative that the United States is anti-Muslim. An even briefer comment on the vetting of refugees. The vetting process that was in place even before the executive orders were issued was already the most complete and thorough security review of any individual entering the United States. And I have never, ever had a reason to fear a refugee, even when they have lived with my family in my home. One final response to the MBR stories came as a surprise to us. A letter from an Indonesian refugee sponsored by our church over 50 years ago, but whose name was missing from our records. On July 24, 1960, my family and I arrived at JFK Airport as a refugee family sponsored by Nassau Church. I am delighted that the community that helped my family to find its way to the United States and then into its culture and economy continues to make this commitment to other families in need. Nassau Church will always be a very special community to me. This letter was sent by Erica Dumple of Atlanta, Georgia, the owner with her husband of an insurance brokerage business, the mother of 3 college graduates, and now, of course, an American citizen. So if you're looking for a way to challenge and invigorate and grow a congregation, if you are seeking to embody the missional church spirit in the lives of your congregants, if you are searching for an intense and personal way to welcome the stranger, then please, please sponsor a refugee family. Finally, let us together live out our faith as doers of the word and provide a positive, informed, and faith-based counter-narrative to the current opposition to refugees in the United States. Thanks be to God.
So as Tom said, he will be hosting a lunch conversation right up here in the front over lunch, so do join him if you would like to learn more about how your church can also host a refugee family. We are going to take a break now. We're grateful for the Board of Pensions for sponsoring the break. We'll come back in here in 20 minutes because Dr. Seung-Chan Rah is here as our second keynoter, and you will not want to be late for his presentation. See you in 20 minutes.